And welcome back to the Cold Start Corner for Buyer Beware, conducting due diligence for your practice purchase. I'm Erich, and in this episode, we are going to identify all of the necessary considerations buyers should make prior to purchasing an optometry practice. So let's face it, purchasing an optometry practice requires buyers conduct due diligence in a variety of key areas, but there are three in particular, that being financial due diligence, legal due diligence, and practice management due diligence. So in this episode, we're going to outline again all of the necessary considerations buyers should take in conducting that due diligence prior to purchasing their practice. So financial due diligence is conducted to evaluate the financial health of the optometry practice you wish to purchase. And we do this to ensure that the practice provides enough revenue to cover expenses, cover debt service terms, and provide that desired income to you, the owner. So it's going to be a comprehensive review of financial stability across the practice. And it's going to include, first and foremost, a strong review of the financial documents. So prior to purchasing the practice, you're definitely going to want to review the practice valuation and all of the supporting financial statements, comparing these collections and reporting for consistency. Now, financial statements to be reviewed are going to include the federal and state tax returns of the seller, state and local sales tax returns, financial and bank statements, and any sort of accountant prepared profit and loss statements. Further, definitely going to want to be delivered collection reports from the general ledger accounting software, as well as the collections shown in the seller's EHR or practice management software. And again, comparing these for consistency. So to build on this review of the financial documents, again, further assessing this financial due diligence, it's also important to really assess the financial viability of the practice. So this is where you're going to want to take the time to conduct a financial forecast and feasibility analysis based on the historical revenues and expenses of the practice. But don't stop there. It's really imperative that buyers include all the ongoing expenses of the practice, particularly general overhead, occupancy, payroll and benefits and labor costs, right? Lab costs, equipment leases and contracts, and any other expenses that will be assumed upon purchase. But additionally, the buyer should also include a 3-year forecasted of practice economics, reflecting their vision for the future, right? So really, what's it going to take to expand that scope of care, to modernize that fixer-upper of a practice, certainly taking into consideration any sort of relocation provisions, among others. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly here, regarding assessing the financial viability, is to be sure that you are including those debt service terms when determining that viability of the venture. So moving along further with, again, the financial due diligence that you are to execute. Again, it starts with a review of the financial documents, then assessing that financial viability, that future-facing financial viability. It's also here vitally important to really get a good, strong understanding of some of those earnings basis measures, particularly EBITDA. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And this is going to provide visibility of the true net profit of the seller's optometry practice. So this calculation is going to start with the net income reported on the seller's financial documents. This is going to add back a variety of expenses that are not going to be assumed by you upon taking over ownership. So these would, again, specifically include like retirement plan contributions for the seller, the depreciation and amortization expense, certainly the owner's salary if the practice is incorporated, as well as any other expenses personal to the seller that will not be incurred by the buyer. Once again, that EBITDA figure can give you a really good understanding of the true net profit of the practice. So moving along, a couple more high-level topics to touch on with your financial due diligence. One is certainly going to be identifying all the assets and liabilities. So it is definitely imperative that you as the buyer understand all of the major assets you're purchasing, as well as any liabilities you'll be assuming responsibility for. So the assets are going to include equipment, inventory, accounts receivable, real estate, and any other items. And certainly liabilities is going to include debts, perhaps employee compensation earned, not yet paid, and any other services paid for but not yet delivered. It's also advised here that you're going to want to obtain a list of all the employees, their current salaries, as well as their benefits enrollment, and a backlog of any employee review documentation. So moving right along, again, still focusing here in this first area of financial due diligence. We started with reviewing the financial documents. From there, got into assessing that financial viability. Then we dug a little bit deeper in calculating the EBITDA. Again, give you a really good understanding of what the true net is. From there, getting a really good understanding and a clearly defined list of exactly what all those assets and liabilities are of the practice. And last but certainly not least, when conducting that financial due diligence, it's really a review of an analysis of the revenue channels. So, when purchasing optometry practice, it's really important for buyers to understand all of the revenue sources segmented by payer, CPT code, service area or department, and patient type, especially when the practice for sale receives managed care reimbursements. So you're going to want to conduct a payer audit by requesting all the appropriate payer reports out of the EHR, with reporting as net collections and broken out by service or product area. Now, if you intend to be credentialed with any medical insurance or vision care plans currently accepted in the practice, you're definitely also going to want to conduct a local managed care audit to ensure that those carriers are still continuing to be utilized. And perhaps in the process, you'll uncover other plans that may be appropriate to add to the practice upon transfer of ownership. So there, we touched on all the high levels revolving around that financial due diligence you will want to be conducting. So you'll recall there are three areas of due diligence before purchasing that practice. It started with financial due diligence. Now we're going to get to area number 2, which is going to be your legal due diligence. So your legal due diligence is going to ensure that the optometry practice you're wanting to purchase is in good legal standing with all federal and state codes. So working with an experienced attorney and advisory team, your legal due diligence is going to include the following. First and foremost, that bill of sale. So you're going to be sure you're going to acquire a list of all of the assets and liabilities to be included in the sale, and the buyer knows exactly what they are purchasing, right? You don't want to assume every asset on that balance sheet is going to be included in the sale. So again, the assets are going to include equipment, inventories, property, trademarks, perhaps real estate, and more. And the liabilities are going to include employee benefits and bonuses, licensing fees, perhaps bank loans, maybe even lawsuits, and anything else that the buyer might be assuming responsibility for upon purchase. And although most sales will not include these liabilities, it's still really important to be fully informed of all facets of the practice. So we've just touched on bill of sale considerations. Moving along here as it pertains to your legal due diligence, then we're going to get into the review of legal documents. Now, look, it is absolutely imperative that buyers counsel evaluate all legal documents relevant to the practice, including articles of incorporation and operating agreements. Additionally, you're going to want to obtain documentation for any ongoing contracts that you as the buyer might be assuming after purchasing the practice, such as like marketing services and vendor agreements. Also, if there are any associates employed in the practice, you as the buyer definitely want to understand their employment contracts and be prepared to renegotiate those. So although most, if not all of these contracts will be replaced with new agreements as you establish the new business entity, definitely a full review of all those legal documents is highly recommended to ensure that due diligence. So moving right along in the realm of legal due diligence, then we get to real estate agreements. Now, understanding both the current and future real estate situation of the practice is vital prior to purchasing the practice. So you as the buyer, your legal due diligence will include review of real estate documents. So definitely going to want to review any commercial lease agreements, purchase agreements, and if there might be real estate involved, then definitely a title and insurance search. Now, there are a variety of key components to assess in the lease agreements, including general lease terms, options for renewal rates, and demolition and relocation clauses, because these are a few of those that will allow landlords to actually break or alter your lease prematurely. So these are just a few in addition to a variety of other considerations revolving around real estate agreements in your legal due diligence. Last but certainly not least, on the front of legal due diligence is going to be intellectual property. So if the business name is going to be transferred to you, the buyer, upon the purchase of the practice, you definitely going to want to obtain all those intellectual property agreements prior. So you're going to want to ensure that the business name is registered properly at both federal and state agencies, and also that all the legal documents and any other trademarks associated with the practice that you do intend to take ownership of upon transfer following the sale, you're going to be sure that you obtain all those and review those as part of your legal due diligence, again, prior to the purchase. So we went ahead and we trucked on through all these elements of financial due diligence. Then we just wrapped up those key considerations for your legal due diligence. And now, last but certainly not least, is going to be practice management due diligence. Now, your practice management due diligence is going to really address the day-to-day operations of the practice to ensure that they meet your expectations as the buyer. So you're going to be sure you're identifying operational issues really early to empower yourself and position yourself to make the right decisions and identify what needs to be done when you assume that ownership. So your practice management due diligence, first and foremost, is going to include getting personal. So if you haven't already, prior to purchasing an optometry practice, it's really important for you as the buyer and the seller to engage in transparent dialogue and a full inspection of the practice. So this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to investigate a variety of items, including the reasons why the seller is selling the practice, their expectations after the sale. Do they plan to retire or continue with patient care? And if so, are they interested in working for you, the buyer? Furthermore, this, getting personal will include a personal visit to the office. It's also going to provide you as the buyer with the opportunity to really get a firsthand view of operations, to engage with the staff, to assess the overall physical condition of the office, and to inspect all property and inventories that will be included in the sale. It's vitally important. So what else? Aside from just getting personal, your practice management due diligence is also going to include a really good, thorough analysis of the business. Now, a key element of your practice management due diligence is really an analysis of that business to illustrate the KPIs that are delivering the financial performance of the practice. Now, thanks to a lot of modern practice management EHR systems, this due diligence can uncover powerful insights. Again, identifying key drivers, constraints, and opportunities across the practice. Now, as the buyer, you're also going to want to request reports from the sellers, segmenting patients in a variety of ways, including perhaps new versus returning patients, patient type, goods and services provided, demographic reporting, also fascinating insights there, as well as equipment utilization and more. So once you've got that really good assessment of the business from an analytics standpoint, then it's important to assess operations and, understand that the existing practice bandwidth for change is going to be a key determinant of the rate at which you as the buyer can implement sustainable change in the practice following that purchase. So you definitely want to obtain the practice's procedures manual and interview both the seller and their administrators or managers to really get a clear understanding of day-to-day operations. And you as a buyer will also want to be sure to evaluate operations inclusive of patient flow, equipment utilization, and personnel requirements. So moving right along, and what I suppose is concluding your practice management due diligence is going to be a good, thorough inspection of equipment and inventory. So again, this is another really important piece of your practice management due diligence prior to purchasing that optometry practice. Again, thoroughly inspecting the equipment and inventory to determine usability and sellability of each. So take the time to tour the office. Tour the office one room at a time. Accompanied by that itemized list of assets and inventory that are going to be included in the sale, and take the time to really thoroughly assess each item to ensure it's in good working condition and to ensure that all inventories are in suitable, sellable condition. Now, this is also a really great opportunity to understand other arrangements the practice may have in place regarding equipment suppliers, in office processes for maintaining equipment, ordering supplies and inventory, and further things on that front. So, again, conducting that practice management due diligence by getting personal with the seller, analyzing the business, assessing operations, and then thoroughly inspecting equipment and inventory is really going to set you up for success as you're going to purchase this practice. So, to pull it all together, it's an exciting time to purchase a practice, especially with all that's on the horizon now and in the future of modern optometry. However, purchasing a practice is just one path to practice ownership for many modern ODs, but it is imperative that you conduct your financial, legal, and practice management due diligence. Why? It's going to empower you throughout the purchase process. It's going to inform your strategy moving forward and position you to succeed upon taking ownership of the practice. So we hope you found this helpful. Please do reach out to us. If you've got any questions or comments regarding anything we've touched on here, connect with us at Akrinos.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow Akrinos across the socials for more great content like this and more for everything you need to plan, develop, and launch a thriving modern practice. From all of us here on Akrinos, Erich Matei signing off.